I was graduating from school, a Jewish kid. It was 3 days actually after the graduation. Cars got hit and spun. I came out of my safety belt, hit my head and neck into the windshield, and my body was put in the morgue as a result. I arrived on the other side, and there were three beings there. Two were facing me, one with his back towards me and very wavy hair. He turned around and he smiled at me, and I knew immediately he was Jesus. I came from an Orthodox Jewish family, so let me tell you, it didn't go over very well. But Mom, Dad, I met Jesus. Son, you're Jewish. So is he. And it was at this point I said to the angel, what's my purpose and missions in life? And they said, you will learn a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with other people.
We are here with Dr. Scott Robinson, and he has had two near-death experiences. In one of these, he went to heaven and met Jesus. Hello, Dr. Scott. Welcome.
Hello, AJ.
I'd like to talk about your first near-death experience. Can you tell us this story, please?
Sure. Actually, it happened right as I was graduating from Catholic school. A Jewish kid going to Catholic school. It was 3 days actually after the graduation. And I was given a gift by my father and my mother of an automobile, a used car. My dad was in the car business. So I got a 1968 Mercury Montego. If you remember, AJ, the older cars from America had bench seats. It was like a big couch. And you could fit three people in the front and three people in the back on these huge doors. So that day, I was invited right after graduation to go see my friend Lou, pick him up and go to his cabin up in Lake Opacan, New Jersey, which was on the border of New York and New Jersey. And we were going to go fishing because I had never been fishing before. I got in the car, and as the sun was coming up, I picked up Lou, got back onto the highway, and started to feel really strange. I would be told later that I drove 23 miles, and I have no memory of it before the accident actually occurred. So I have no idea. It's almost as though they took me out to prevent me from suffering anything, especially pain, because I would be told later that the car got hit and spun. I came out of my safety belt, hit my head and neck into the windshield and to the door frame on those old cars. They were pretty heavy. And my head hit the door handle grabber thing that you got in and out of the car with, and it left a dent. And for a split second, I woke up on the passenger side, couldn't figure out how the heck I got there. The door opened up, I fell out, and my head hit the boot of a New Jersey State Super Trooper, highway police officer. And the last things I heard were, he's DOA. And apparently he's the one that called it. And my body was put in the morgue as a result. I left my body, went out. I noticed that I was somewhere up, floating above the earth when a large angel appeared to me. I just automatically knew it was my guardian angel. And he said, before we go any further, look down to the earth and tell me what you see. And I looked down and I saw these lights coming up, some small and thin, some very thick. He said, do you know what those are? I said, no. He said, those are prayers, small individual ones or group prayers for people praying for the same thing. I said, interesting. He said, we have to go now. And I went down this tunnel. And it was as though I was the passenger in my car driving 100 miles an hour, and the lights were just flashing right by me. I arrived on the other side where I met my grandfather, who I'm named for. Now, he died a year before I was born. And Jewish people, they're not usually named for their living relatives. At least Ashkenazics aren't. There's Ashkenazic and Sephardic. Sephardic comes from the Arab world or the areas of Italy and Spain. whereas the Ashkenazic comes from Europe. So European Jews don't name their children or grandchildren for anybody unless they've passed away. So I recognized my grandfather from his picture. He said, however, you can't stay here. You don't belong. You have not fulfilled your purpose and missions in life, and you have to return. But, keyword is but, I have someone for you to meet before you go back. So he took me into a small room, and there were three beings there. Two were facing me, one with his back towards me, and very wavy hair, about my height. He turned around and I said, "Are you the being everybody calls Jesus?" And he smiled at me, and I knew immediately he was Jesus. He said, "I'm called by many names, but because of your heritage, I will call you the little Prince of Peace, and you can call me Big Brother. I have to send you back now because you have to fulfill your purpose and missions in life. But if you need anything, call out to me and I'll be there for you." And on two occasions, he's appeared when things were really tough. Now, I did recognize the other being behind him on the right side, and I knew that that was Michael the Archangel. The being on the left side, I didn't recognize. And as you know, I teach divine training sessions. It was that being that said, "You will learn a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with others. And who I am, you'll figure that out later on." And I would. So at the same time I'm going through this, my mom and dad are called by the highway patrol, by that same officer that pronounced me dead, and said, "Your son has been in a bad accident. Please come and identify his body." And they went, "What?" But my mom said she knew me. She was born on Halloween. She was psychic. I got my psychic gifts from my mom's side. She said, "No," to my dad, "Herman, he's okay. He'll be fine. You'll see." And so they drove down to the hospital. My dad wanted to go in through the emergency room entrance. My mom said, "No, he's not there. Let's go to the back where the morgue is." So they drove to the back of the building, opened up the doors, came down a long hallway, and saw a man pushing a body on a gurney into the refrigeration unit of the morgue. And as they got closer, because they couldn't see who this body was because it was covered, the man suddenly vanished. My mom and dad said, "Well, it must have been a dark hallway," because it was a dark hallway. So they said, "Oh, he must have just walked into the shadows after he left my body by the refrigeration unit." So they never knew what happened. They didn't question it. They just figured he was another intern or resident or somebody that worked there at the hospital. Well, at the same time I'm going through what I'm going through, they're witnessing this, and they go and they pull the sheet back from this body, and it's me. And suddenly I get drawn back into my body, and boom, I wake up. And I said, "Mom, Dad, I met God. I met Grandpa." And my dad said to me, "Son, you were in an accident. You hit your head. Come with us." I went, "Okay." I went to hop off the table and went, "Oh, my head hurts." And so mom took one side, dad took the other arm, and they helped me get off the table, walked me down this dark corridor and out the two double doors of the morgue. They put me in the back of my dad's car, where I laid down with the worst headache I had ever had, and they drove me home. The next day, they drove me to Montefiore Hospital in New York, just down the block from Yankee Stadium and where my dad's Jerome Volkswagen was. And they did an investigation on my brain, EEG, EKG. They didn't have MRIs yet, but they had CAT scans and other stuff in those days. And the doctor said, "I don't know what to tell you. We can't figure out what happened to you." So in those days, Raymond Moody's book had just come out, Life After Life. And he said, "I think you should read this book." And my mom said, "Yes, read this book." So I went home and I read that book. And I realized that what Raymond Moody was talking about was like me, a case where I left my body, met God, went across to the other side, and was sent back. Now, as a result of that, I decided to go on to medicine as my profession. First to college, undergraduate, and then to professional school. First, I became a chiropractor. Then I went on to become a medical examiner. And then I went and became a court doctor. And in between, I practiced in the countries of Israel, Belgium, and in Mexico.
The fact that you came from a Jewish family and you met Jesus, did this cause you any sort of trouble?
Yes, it did. I came from an Orthodox Jewish family, so let me tell you, it didn't go over very well. But Mom, Dad, I met Jesus. Son, you're Jewish. So is he. And he calls me the little Prince of Peace. My Hebrew name is Shalom Gershon Ben Zvi, which means peaceful messenger, son of the sovereign. Now, one of the things I did not know until that time, my mom and dad knew I was a different kid. I had unusual gifts since I was a child. I knew I was a little different. I could predict things even before this near-death experience. So I said, Mom, Dad, you realize he was Jewish when he died on the cross. Christianity doesn't occur for another 328 years as we understand it. He was originally there for fellow Jews like us. And what she told me was that we are in the line of David. My mom's side of the family are Aronowitz, Horowitz, and Simons, which are the three different branches of Aaron and Moses of the Bible. And Jesus would have been a cousin.
Did you encounter any problems sharing your story when you were that age, right after high school, with your friends and with other people? How was their reaction? And did it take for you to integrate this experience?
It took a while, but I have to tell you, I was already different before this accident, and I became even more different. And as this time, I was the proud purveyor of the word weird, which actually one of the definitions of the word weird means spiritually unique and different. I always was. My brothers didn't know what to do with me. My sisters said, I don't know about this guy. So at first, it was a bit of a chaotic thing until my gifts started to turn on and I could predict people's deaths. That did not go over well at all. You thought being Jewish and meeting Jesus would have been a problem. They said, please don't tell us if you see a vision and please don't draw. What happened was all of a sudden I'd have a vision and I would have this ability to draw a person perfectly. And the moment I drew that person, within 3 days, they would die. So my family said, would you mind not doing that? And for instance, when the phone would ring, I'd say, Mom, Dad, someone died. Pick it up. Go pick up the phone. Someone's died. So that kind of stuff happened to me all of the time. But my sister was afraid of me. My brothers thought I was weird. My younger brother, who became a psychologist, really gave me a hard time. And none of my family believed any of this except my mother and father. My mother had gifts already before I had this and before I was born. So she was aware of these gifts and she didn't really share them much. My own family gave me the hardest time. Strangers wanted to hear my story and I would share that. The doctors, they did not know how to deal with me. They just knew I was different.
20 years later, you had another near-death experience.
Well, in between the time I had my first near-death and the second near-death, I went on to become a chiropractor and a medical examiner for the state of California Division of Workers' Compensation. I became a medical expert witness, and part of my job was to travel, track down a patient, do the exam, and show up in court the next day for either the insurance company, a judge, or whoever hired me for whatever reason. Now, because I traveled so much, I went and became a pilot. I followed in my father's footsteps. My dad was a bomber pilot in World War II. My mom used to make the engines for dad's airplane. So I followed my dad's footsteps, and my dad and my mom were my first and second person that I took up after I got my pilot's license. Well, I used my pilot's license for the state of California and for workers' comp and all those other things so that the insurance companies could hire me or the judge and say, fly up to this location in California or Nevada or Arizona or wherever they wanted me to go, track this person down and do the exam and come and tell us your findings. On one of these occasions, it was going to be a winter traveling in high altitude, cold weather, actually bad wet weather, probably icy conditions at high altitude where I had to go. And I had a flight instructor with me. We went up to Big Bear, which is in Southern California, the Lake Arrowhead area. And I was doing touch and goes at high altitude, 8,000 to 12,000 feet. And afterwards, I came up to 12,000 feet again after coming off the mountain runway. And I suddenly got really dizzy and lightheaded. And I almost blacked out and fell over the yoke. That's the stick. It looks like a steering wheel. And I went, oh, I don't feel so good. And my flight instructor, Lisa, pushed the yoke forward and we dove down to about 8,000 feet where I regained consciousness. She immediately flew us home. I landed back at my Long Beach area where my flight school was. I always was flight training constantly. I think for every flight hour I took, I was training 2 hours just to make sure I was doing things properly. So as I arrived back, she said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." I got in that car and I got dizzy again. Well, I used to work for the sheriff's department and the police department, so I had a sticker on my car. And I pulled over to the side and a cop stopped. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, officer, I'm not." He knew about my brother. My brother was a cop. And he followed me back to home and to actually my medical examiner's office. And so I went in for my flight exam, which I was due. And he said, "You're bleeding inside. You're internally bleeding. You're anemic. I'm going to send you for some tests." So he sent me to the Keck Institute for both x-rays and evaluation. And I knew two of the three doctors that were going to be testing me. That's how I got to the Keck Institute at USC Medical Center. They put me under anesthesia. And if you remember that Michael Jackson died of a high dose of medication that he was using for sleep, but it never should have been used for sleep, they used that same medication to knock me out. And while I was on the operating table to have both an upper and a lower GI done simultaneously to find out the source of my bleeding, where they came up with this diagnosis that was radical and they wanted me to go through their therapy, I came out of my body. I came above my body. I floated there. It's called a veridical near-death experience. And as I floated out of my body and could see everything that was going on in the operating table and in the operating room, I knew that the doctor and his main nurse were having some kind of an affair. They both were wearing the same shoes and they were having a conversation they should have never had in front of me. I was talking to an angel that was next to me. And I said, "My body's in a really bad shape. Can I go home now?" And they said, "No, you still haven't fulfilled your purpose and missions in life." And it was at this point I said to the angel, "What's my purpose and missions in life?" And they said, "You will learn a simple technique to heal yourself and share that with other people." I said, "Okay." They said, "You got to go back in your body now and we'll talk to you later." So I went back into my body. And when I woke up, I immediately told my mom and my dad I had left my body again. I got to talk to an angel. They said everything would work out okay and I would heal. The doctors did not like the findings, both through x-rays and blood. And they said, "We're concerned. This doesn't look good. We're going to send you home. We want you to do our therapy because we don't think you got long to go. You're probably not going to make it from what we suspect this might be. And we want you to go through this real radical therapy," which I didn't want to do, "and go home and write your obituary, make sure your insurance is in order, and enjoy the rest of your life." And I went, "No, I'm not going to accept this." I said, "I don't care what you said. God never told me about going home. If he said I'm going home, I would be going home. But he didn't say anything. I don't know about you, but I'm going down to Mexico." And I worked with Hulda Clark, the Cure for All Diseases, and the Gerson Institute. And I went down there, and for 3 months, I lived in going back and forth to Mexico and San Diego. I would stay and work with them, both as the patient and the doctor. I got to be both. And I went through certification program. I came back to Keck Institute at USC Medical Center 3 months later, where they reevaluated me and said, we must have made a mistake. We can't find anything wrong with you. And I said, you do realize you're talking to a former medical examiner? And they shut up. They went, mm-hmm. My file disappeared, and I had no records of anything other than what I had got previously copied. And now I went searching for this simple technique to heal myself so that I could share it with other people. And it found me. I got a phone call one day from a woman who used to work with me in my nonprofit group called the International Holistic Healing Circle and Society, where I would teach doctors alternatives in medicine to help people heal from all over the world. She called me and said God told her to give me this book on spiritual healing. Would I be interested? And I said, I was told a month ago that I would learn a simple technique to heal myself. I've been waiting. Where you been? And she started to laugh. And so she brought me the book. I followed the procedures. And in 3 days, I received the first of 3 healings in 3 weeks. I was on my way to help and healing. Now, what that technique is called? Einstellen. 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 Tuning into the source and asking for help and healing. One of the things that God always teaches me, and so do the angels, they don't want to know what you think. They want to know how you feel. They tell you the most important thing is your body is a tool. Use it for that. I don't want to know what you think, but how your body feels while you're doing this. Einstellen, the power of prayer, pushing faint matter, balancing of numbers or frequencies, verbal and otherwise, and removing negative emotions that no longer serve you. And those are the 5 main things that I teach people and share with everybody. Everything that dealt with what they sent me back to Earth for. One of my clients was a devout Christian man named Mr. Brown. And he said to me, I want you to help me because I understand that you met Jesus. I said, you do remember I'm Jewish, right? And he said, yes. I said, by the way, why did you hire me? Because I know you're so devoutly Christian. You have Christian doctors and nurses and Christian dentists. Why me? And he said, because you were the one that we heard had met Jesus. I'm Christian and I've never met him. And he said, I was told, this is Mr. Brown talking, that only Christians went to heaven or they went first in line to heaven. I said, that's funny. I've been across twice and nobody ever told me that in any way, shape, and form. So Mr. Brown actually had a near-death experience in the process of me teaching him what to do in alternatives and spiritual healing. And he came back and he actually said, Dr. Robinson, you were right. There's Jews, there's Christians, there's Buddhists, there's Hindus, there's Muslims, there's everybody up here, and everybody's welcome. And I said, I told you. And then shortly afterwards, he would die and he would cross over. And on the day of his death, the day of his passing, an angel appeared in my room and said, there are no lines in heaven when you reach the pearly gates, Christians in the center, Jews to the left, Muslims to the right, for you are all children of God and you are all welcome. And then the angel started to laugh how silly human beings are and about how they're prejudiced towards one thing or another. And then they went to tell me, never hate anyone or anything and never commit suicide unless it's your task to do so to save another soul. My case, that wasn't the case. So 2 things that can mess up your soul: suicide and hatred. Never hate anybody or anything. Otherwise, you'll come back in a future lifetime in the thing you hate. So what's going on in the world right now? Ukrainians will come back as Russians. Russians will come back as Ukrainians. Jews will come, and Israelis will come back as Palestinians. Palestinians are going to come back as Jews and Israelis. And that's what happens in the cycle of life. If you hate anything, you'll come back in the thing you hate.
You developed this technique based on different teachings you found?
Well, number one, what they showed me from the other side, especially Einstein, that was told to me directly what to do. All the other things about prayer came to me over different times, and I manifest them together into one format called a divine training session. And it was actually God voice that talked to me and said, "You're going to call this a divine training session. I am merely a conduit by which the energy comes through me." I tell people I am not the gift. It is the gift that comes through me from the other side, God. God does all the work. I just do the prayers and divinely guide them as I'm instructed from the other side what this person needs to work on to fulfill their purpose and missions in life. So just know, in the United States, only an MD and God can cure. So I don't even use those words. I do not do the healing. The healing is between the person and God, not me. I'm merely a conduit. You must have faith in God, trust in a being like Jesus, who is a divine connector and has that ability to connect us to source, and also believe in your own divinity and your ability to heal. The doctors I work with believe that God is the greatest physician and there is no incurable, only people who cannot yet believe. As a matter of fact, there was a 17th century physician and PhD, we would call him, but he was a religious doctor who said, God is the greatest physician. It's just people cannot yet believe that they are worthy enough to heal. And that was, his name was Paracelsus. And he was, and it goes back even further to the Greeks and the
Yeah, I
Romans.
remember Paracelsus. He was a pioneer in many ways.
Right.
He was one of the first physicians that used natural therapy.
And then along came, within the next 100 years, Holloman, who was another religious PhD type person and also healing personality. He came up with homeopathy, taken from the Bible. So all these different things changed in the late 1800s and early 1900s when the medical community we know today was established by Rockefeller and his friends, who wanted to use the power of chemicals and the oil industry to manufacture pharmaceuticals. So, as we know it, by the year 1923, the medical establishment pushed all of the things out that were natural, and only the established pharmaceutical industry continued. His job, he actually wrote down, it's our job to destroy anything that's natural and made sure only what we make can be used to help people.
Okay, so how can people contact you or learn more about you and your technique?
First of all, my book's name is There Are No Lines in Heaven. It can be purchased through Amazon, either in an ebook variant or in a real life variant. It's a heavy book. It's 3 pounds. It's 18 inches by 12 inches, and it's 3 inches thick. So you can buy either of those versions on Amazon. You can also go to my website, https :// there are no lines in heaven.com. And you can read about my story and you can see all of the interviews. There's got to be between 9 and 12 different stories that are on there and interviews that I've done through YouTube. There's my Good Morning Dallas TV show, those types of things where people can do. And you'll find my contact information on my website. And for those that don't want to go to the website, my telephone number where you can reach me is area code 760-917-2625. That's 760-917-2625. And they can contact me. They can get me at my website and email me through there, or you can get me at healer2besure@gmail.com. That's HEALER, the number 2, the letter B, sure, SURE, at symbol, A with a circle, gmail.com. So healer2besure @gmail.com. The average DTS, or Divine Training Session, is 90 minutes long. And yes, I ask for a donation. And so some people can take care of it. Some people can't, but I will divinely guide you if I can help you in any way, shape, or form that I can. That is not my decision on who receives healing. That's between your soul and God. So I want to make sure that people are clear.
Well, it was a pleasure having you on this show. Thank you. And I'm sure that you're going to continue helping a lot of people.
I'm glad and thankful that you responded to my query and asked me to join you today on this show. Thank you, and God bless, and have a great day.
This has been the A.J. Parr Spiritual Journalist Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe.